Have you ever felt like no matter how many times you start over, you end up right back where you begin, stuck, exhausted, and battling the same fears? Today, I'm joined once again by transformational guide Mike Rosenberg to uncover why stepping into your next level often awakens ancestral wounds, deep anxiety, and patterns of self sabotage. We'll explore how these hidden forces are not here to break you, but to initiate you into a profound transformation that can unlock your energy, clarity, and true power.
Welcome to Awakening Soul Divinity, your sacred space for deep healing and transformation. Listen to inspiring conversations with healing experts, spiritual guides, and teachers as we explore ancient wisdom, modern healing, and powerful stories of change. I'll also share practical insights from my personal journey, from spiritual crisis to inner purpose. Whether you're seeking to overcome anxiety, embrace your true nature, or awaken your higher self, this podcast offers guidance to help you transform your life and elevate collective consciousness.
Now, before we dive in, if you're here because you're seeking truth, healing, and transformation, make sure to subscribe and share this episode with someone who's ready for their own awakening. Every conversation here is meant to inspire your journey and remind you you're not alone. Welcome back, Mike.
Hey, here we
Hey.
go again. What a fabulous intro. I'm excited about the topic with some
Yeah.
keywords that you dropped in there. Initiation. I love it.
Yeah. You love that word, I'm sure. I think I know you well enough. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to this conversation with you too. So, Mike, why is it that when we try to step into the next level of our lives, it often feels like everything gets harder instead of easier?
Yeah, great question to begin with. I feel that, we are here on planet Earth, working through our personal curriculum to learn who we are, to remember who we are, to experience all of the ways that our soul wants to express. And with that curriculum, you need to have something to sharpen the knife on, per se, like the grindstone. And I feel when these times come up that feel like they are challenging, stretching us, or, oh my God, I've been here before. I can't believe this is happening again. Rather than that being some kind of thing that's in the way, even though it can feel like it's in the way, it's there right on time, right on purpose, because it's the doorway to that next version of ourselves. We've got to go through something familiar and break through the thing that maybe is not serving us to get to that next version. But we got to feel that thing. It's there for a reason.
So, when you talk about that thing, can you go a little bit deeper into that? What maybe coming from your perspective, what's that thing?
First words that come to mind are self-sabotage.
Okay.
This is a big topic. You could go many directions with self-sabotage, but our ways, the little things about ourselves that we would like to see transformed, that maybe continue to hang around or even get stronger at times, that we know are slowing us on our path, that we know are perhaps keeping us from accessing our full divine power within, our full belief within ourselves. So self-sabotage can show up as limiting beliefs, destructive thoughts, bad habits, maybe this little inner critic inside that doesn't even always have specific words or conversation, but it can be representing things like an unworthiness
Mm-hmm.
or keeping us from feeling like we're truly ready and deserving of that next level. I find that sometimes these narratives show up in all sorts of way. For me, it shows up in sometimes the vices that have come up over again and again and again and again, where I might be seeking pleasure in a moment from a vice, and I might be sabotaging, right? The momentum that I've been building all of that time. And I might ask myself, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep doing this? I've had so much practice with this. I know what I'm doing. I know all the things, but there's something within me that has me still do it. What is that? And
Mhm.
I've noticed that for many people, yeah, it's this realm of self-sabotage.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of these belief systems and the underlying stuff that goes on that we don't even know about, they're like they shape our behaviors in ways that we don't even notice what they are. And which it brings me to something that I've heard you talk a lot about, and that's or within the last couple of weeks since we've had a couple of conversations, you were kind of bringing this stuff up, but um, present moment fear, you brought that up. And I'd like for you to get into that a little bit more because a lot of us seem to be having present moment fear, but it's not for what we think it is in some cases, you know? So, what do you have to say about that?
Sure. Fear is our best friend, I believe. And I think that the way to go about fear is to make it your best friend, but it can be coming from many different places. And sometimes, as I know for somebody like myself, I always want to know what the thing is. Like, why is this happening? Why do I feel fear? I need to fully understand what caused it to get out of it. And this is not always the case.
Right.
Sometimes it's the case, but sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes it can help to have an awareness around what caused the fear so that you can choose differently and you can move towards it and you can work with it. But other times we just feel fear and we can't describe or know where it's coming from. And it might be in a subtle sensation. And a lot of times this can be coming from our ancestral lineage. This could be coming from past lives. This could be coming from family members. This could be coming from energy that we're picking up from the environment around us. And in these moments, I find it's more important to drop out of the mind as best as possible because the mind can start to go crazy trying to diagnose and dissect it. And that could be an endless hole. Like, is this it? Is this it? I'm not really sure if this is it. It could be that. And then
Uh,
you're caught in a loop, not even
I
getting to
know.
the thing.
I
So,
know. I know.
like I feel these bodies, these intelligent vessels are here to feel.
Yeah. Oh.
And it is through feeling that we can best navigate
Mhm.
our spiritual self, our energetic self, any of these ancestral energies that are coming through because feeling uh is most directly linked to our internal energy and it's like an emotional intelligence that I've developed over the years that's helped me best move through that. And I'll just wrap it up with this. Fear can always be transmuted into something greater, something more expansive. So the point of this is to take the fear and to feel it fully and
Mhm.
to work with it the way that your intuitive guidance tells you to. And for me, a lot of times that's just sitting with it and asking questions until it begins to dissipate or give me
I
some answers.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say next because I have this little lineup of questions I want to ask you from all that. But what
Mm.
I've learned for myself is that fear is there to protect us, and it's like, um, but we're always so scared of that fear that we don't connect with it. We just run away from it. And when you connect with any of these feelings that you were mentioning, it's like you talk to the fear. You say, "Hey, why are you here?" Are you here, fear? You know, I mean, what you can learn so much from having a conversation with your emotions, with our emotions. I've done it a couple of times. You know, sometimes I'm not good at it, but I have learned it. And I think that's still a process for me too, because I've not really gotten into the place where I get answers the way I think it's more like I don't get answers the way I think I should get the answers, right? I get it in different ways because that's we're all different. So sometimes fear will speak to us. Sometimes fear will, you know, come up in the body somewhere, wherever, and you just have to listen to your body. And when you're embodied enough and you can feel everything in your body, the feelings and the sensations and all that kind of stuff, then you can listen to find out what that means. So it doesn't always show up the same way for everybody. But I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's important. And also feelings are very important to recognize because they're like a GPS system for us. GP system for us. GPS system. I never know how to say that. Anyway, so when a feeling comes up, it's guiding us into something like fear is protecting your or I can't even remember what fear
Protecting us, yeah.
it's protecting us, but so does anger. Anger protects us. It protects our boundaries. It teaches us to set up our boundaries, but it also helps with, you know, anger is related to passion. So passion, when you
Right.
get angry about something going on in the world, you're going to get passionate, hopefully, to go find a way to change that thing, you know?
Yeah.
Sadness is a feeling that we have because we've something's ending or we're losing something. It helps us to grieve, you know, those different things. So feelings are important. We don't think they are because we've been taught not to, you know. And yeah, and while we're talking about feelings, let me ask you about this one because everybody right now that I talk to in one form or another, including me sometimes still, runs into anxiety. And I know you and I have had that conversation as part of all this stuff too, where anxiety comes up. I know what the difference now is with fear and anxiety. Can you give your version of what that difference is? Can you kind of share that?
Sure. Well, something you said really resonates when you said like the fear is directing us or pointing us towards something.
Mhm.
So all emotions are, and you remind me there's this emotional wheel that has, I think, like 60 or 70 or 80 emotions written on it. So there's all these different shades of red, of green, of blue. It's not just red, green, blue, right? And
Right.
I feel it's the same with even fear and anxiety. There's different shades, and they can be coming from different triggers and different areas of our life. But they're all pointing us towards something. And if we look the other way because it's uncomfortable or try to push it away, we won't find the map per se or the opening that it's trying to create for wherever it wants to take us. When I think about when I feel fear and anxiety. Anxiety could be more of a nervousness. For me, anxiety could be even tied into excitement. Like I'm really excited to be on this podcast, but I'm anxious
It's
because
the
I
same energy. Yes, it's
I
the
want it
same
to go
energy.
well.
I
Yeah,
know.
right. It's like it's
Yeah.
tough sometimes. Anxiety for me, fear is more associated with harm. Like I think I'm going to be harmed in some kind of way subconsciously from an ancestral aspect. If somebody in our lineage went through, I mean, I'll just take it to the oldest sense, right? The cavemen and whatnot, fearing the tiger as they need to go out and hunt for food. I mean, that still carries in our DNA and it can show up in a present day situation. Like, I'm going to make a social media post, but I might feel that I'm going to be attacked. Whereas in many, many years ago, or somebody in our lineage or in primal times, that, we maybe we're going to be killed, right? Even like ancient sages, like Jesus and the disciples, right? They used to speak their truth on religious in a religious sense and be crucified for that. And that can show up. We're like, where is that fear coming from? I feel like something terrible is about to happen, but it's in a different sense. It's coming through the bloodline still. So yeah, anxiety is like, I don't know, it could even come from excitement, but
That's
fear,
exactly. It's the same energy. It's exactly
yeah,
the same energy. Somebody told me that one time. I said, God, I'm so anxious about such, such, and they're like, Are you sure you're anxious? You could be excited. And I was, oh, look, another way to look at it. That's fun.
yeah, yeah, exactly,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So, well, now since we're on feelings, I want to before I kind of move into the ancestral piece of it because I can help a little bit from my experiences with the work I've done for myself, and I'd love to hear some shares of any work that you've done if you have. But as far as these feelings, what kind of work have you done around like my work is around grief for myself and to help others walk through it. Have you had, or what work have you done with grief for yourself to move to the other side? Because it's a very powerful and necessary practice that a lot of people won't do because it's kind of scary too.
Yeah. Well, I did a ceremony when I lived in Peru with someone who specializes in grief rituals and bringing people through them. And that
Okay.
was one of the most interesting things I've ever gone through. And yeah, I don't remember every single thing that we did, but he really tied it into yeah, ritual practice and um he had many powerful questions that would provoke where grief comes from in your life because it could come from so many ways. Many of us have never had anyone pass away. I never have, right? Like I have all my family members, my friends, at least the close ones. So I maybe have not experienced that kind of grief in such an extreme sense, but we can grieve the person that we were. We can grieve the thing that we thought we missed out on in life. We can grieve the time where we thought that we were let down by something and thought that we should have gotten what we deserved in life, or maybe, broken up with by a significant other, or even a dream that we had that we never went after. And there can be this grief in the heart that's sitting there that's like, I just missed the boat on that one, and it's a sadness. Now, this emotion of grief I've experienced a lot in my life. And for me, it had a big question mark because I didn't know where it was coming from. I said, to my recollection, I didn't have anyone huge pass away. I've had grandparents and things, and they were big at the time, but nothing that totally knocked me off my center big time. And it would show up a lot of my plant medicine ceremonies. And I'd be in these other countries and in the jungle, and it would just be buckets and buckets of grief pouring out of me. So it's so interesting because I know the feeling so well, but I was always saying, like, why? Why do I feel this? And I feel that grief is one of the biggest emotions moving through our collective.
Hmm.
And I think it takes a lot of us collectively even to do that in community because there's so many areas that we are saddened by and for me, grief, especially when it's a way we can help each other move through our emotional states and our evolution because grief requires a lot of compassion, a lot of acceptance, a lot of fully feeling the emotion. And so I've had times where I've cried and cried and cried, and then in these ceremonies, just thrown up in buckets, and it has felt like,
I've done that before. I get it. That's why I'm
yeah,
laughing.
yeah. And so the best I could come to it, the best I could recognize is as I was learning more about um, ancestral patterns that run through us and past life as well, I naturally acknowledged that a lot of the grief was coming from that
Hmm.
people in my lineage have experienced a lot of these traumatic, saddening times. I'm Jewish. It could have even have been the Holocaust and
Yeah.
how much grief came through that. And I've always felt that I'm an energetic vessel that's helping move that. So I'll wrap up this point with this. I feel whatever we feel in our body, no matter whether we know where it's coming from or not, it's been given to us from somewhere because we are able to help transmute that energy and shed light on it for the
Yeah.
collective, for ourselves, for our lineage, for this planet.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Thank you for sharing it that way. And I've got again, I've got another couple of things. So you had mentioned communal grief. I wrote communal grief. We're not taught in many cases, especially in the West, how to grieve or how to support someone who's grieving. Most of us, because we were told to squash all that stuff down and it's stuck in there, we're like, if somebody starts grieving or if there's something going on, that we're like, oh, don't cry, don't cry. Well, that's the last and the worst thing that you need to do with someone who's in grief because they need to do that. They need to release these emotions because if they don't, then it's going to stay stuck in the body until the next opportunity that comes up to grieve. So it's very important that we learn to hold that space for people. And if it starts to affect you, then you get to take a look at yourself and just create a safe space for yourself so you can hold space for somebody else to do their grieving because it will touch on your grief if you haven't grieved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is like our heart connection. I feel like
Mhm.
the magnetic connection between our heart when we hold space for somebody and they're grieving, it's something's happening within us too. Something's unlocking, something's open up. And yeah, the more we do it with our own work and emotions and grief, then yes, we can be that space uh, to hold that space for someone else. We energetically have that understanding to be able to hold that space.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah. And also too, what it's doing. I love giving the interesting factoids around why we do certain things, because that way we understand. If we don't really understand why things are happening, then we're like, I don't know how to handle this. So as far as like being present with somebody, we have these things called mirror neurons. And have you ever watched somebody yawn? I'm even thinking about it. I'm about to get ready to yawn.
I think I
Yeah.
was too, as you said that.
Well, that's the thing. We have these mirror
Inception, right? Yeah.
neurons, and if somebody's grieving, we're going to feel their pain. That's also empathy.
Right.
That is just natural. And or if somebody's crying, we're going to cry. Somebody's laughing, we're going to laugh. And bringing that thing up, as far as grief itself, that thing is, crying is not the only thing we do when we grieve, and it also isn't that list of you know this step one, step two, steps in that order. It doesn't go in that order. It's always circular. But we can cry, we can laugh, we're going to get angry. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things that can happen when we grieve. So being able to support that in somebody else kind of requires you doing the grief work for yourself, and that's a huge thing to understand. And then you brought up the whole piece. This is my favorite subject, by the way. I think you brought up the whole piece about the ancestral, the lineage stuff. And when we, like you were talking about self-sabotage, you're talking about the grieving, you're talking about all these different things related to the ancestors. When we finally catch ourselves in these patterns, that moment is when we have a choice to break this cycle or keep repeating it.
And one thing that also just came to mind while you were just speaking about taking advantage and working with the grief when it comes up is that I just wanted to add is for me it feels like an open loop and like there's no completion to something that needs completion within us if we don't deal with it in that moment. And then
Mhm.
like you said, it gets buried years down the line, but it's asking for something when it arises. Every emotion is. It's asking for light to be shed on it, for attention, for love, for it to be held.
Compassion.
Compassion, exactly. That's how it moves on. With
Yeah.
with the ancestral work, I've had some really great teachers in my life who are very tuned into ancestral work, who come from mostly Central and South America, the teachers that I've had. So one in particular is from Bolivia, and this is a lot of the work she does, and she'll hold ancestral ceremonies to help us cut cords to some of the heavier baggage that we might be carrying in our souls and our cellular memory from our ancestors. So I got to do a lot of work in Bolivia. And I traveled for 4 years, as you know, and I kept finding myself in these places with different healers and shamans. And much of the time it would come back from ancestral. So I can't always say, like, it was this specific thing. But over and over and over, I would hear the message, Mike, you're carrying a lot of baggage. I would even have back pains a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
time. They would say because there's things that have happened on the masculine side of my lineage and the feminine side of my lineage. And one thing in particular was that a healer told me that they were picking up somewhere along the line the men in my lineage were not so good to the women in my lineage. And there might have been some things with sexual abuse. There might have been some things with repression of suppression of voices. And there was something that was out of balance. And they told me that what that was doing was actually kind of blocking energy that I need to be getting in accessing my masculine energy from that side of the lineage because of things that people in my line had done many, many years back.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in my learning about it, we are always communicating with our ancestors, right? They say 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. They're here with us right now. There are many unresolved issues that they couldn't resolve in their lives because they did not have the know-how or the training or were not quite ready. But as part of our soul contract, our agreement on this planet, we're working with them, they're working with us, we're still healing things for them because they're a part of us.
Uh-huh.
Because really all is one and they're here at the same time, right? There is no time. And I know that that's like another deeper conversation for another time, but so I see it in two ways. I see it as, yes, we're helping them heal, and they're supporting us like at our back in our life, invisible, but here with us, helping us heal. But also there are things that we don't necessarily need to be carrying that were theirs. Sometimes we have a tendency to take on all of the traits and the things, and this is where cord cutting comes into place because there may have been vows made in the past, whether that be religious vows, marriage vows, poverty vows, all these different things that could be, yeah, affecting us. Or maybe they're like asking us to do all the work for them, and that's not really totally our responsibility. So the lines get crossed a little bit. And
Mhm.
sometimes we can be carrying this extra weight, and either the cords to that weight need to be severed and we need to claim back our sovereignty, and also there are things in our own life through our everyday actions that we can actually help dissipate that energy and solve things in our life and simultaneously for them. So I know that I kind of went a little bit everywhere in that, but I would have these like shamans who really knew this stuff take me up on mountaintops and work with energies and rays and mountains and spirits that they were fully tuned into, that were helping me clean the ancestral line so that I could reclaim my full self in this life. And I apologize if there's any tapping in the background. There's some
I
construction.
hear nothing.
You can't
I'm
hear it?
so
Great. The
focused. No,
microphone.
I am so
All right.
focused on what you're saying. I don't know what it's going to look like on the other side, but that's okay.
Okay. They might be the ancestors. My
It's
kids
not, they're
under
knocking at your
construction and
door.
they're knocking right now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you didn't go all over the place because you actually told my story, because I've done a lot of ancestral healing work, and you're correct. This is my experience. What you just shared was my experience with the way I did it. Now, I didn't have shamans, and I wish, but I didn't. I didn't have shamans. I didn't have anybody to help me with any of the stuff that you've done. I did it on my own, which was kind of interesting. But the pieces that you were talking about, like I have documents from World War II. So we've got the Holocaust in common. In fact, there's probably a connection in there somewhere because I feel like we're all connected, right? But my entire family in some way was connected with the Holocaust. So I have this paperwork that was in or is in uh, German, Czech, and Hebrew. And it's like this big stack that I had been going through, and I'm still I'm organizing it now, but I've gone through that other process, and I had to use Google Translate just to figure out what was going on. And I came across some things in there, related to the beginning of the war in Prague, and all these different things. My mother was 6 years old. They were escaping Czechoslovakia when they annexed that area, the Sudetenland, and all that kind of stuff. And my grandparents took my mother, and if they hadn't done that, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. They took my mother to Palestine. At the time, it was Palestine. So they left in 1939. And so what's interesting to me is when I learned all that stuff, I knew that I was a generational kind of trauma breaker kind of person. And I, and so I was doing the work so I could heal myself initially. Then I start with the paperwork and everything. I'd start connecting with them. And just like you're saying, it's like I connected with them. They start helping me heal. I'm helping them heal, back and forth, back and forth. There's a little more to it. I mean, this is kind of a surfacey conversation about it. But at one point, with everything that they knew, I actually got a message from them saying that as we're doing this work, that they're actually here to help us with what's going on now because they've experienced it before, and it's not just them helping me and me helping them. It's like a collective kind of thing because they're all connected to other ancestral lineages so they can all work together, to help us. And the thing that I'm seeing though is when we do the grief work, when we heal trauma, when we do all these different things for ourselves and it heals all that stuff, it goes into the lineages and it can create this energy within the lineages to help us with what's happening right now. And when they said that to me, they were like, yeah, we've got they know what happened back then. They know what's happening now, and they have the answers and they have the things that they could share with us to help us to share with other people. So the more people that do it, in my mind, that's kind of the way I see it, the more we can help other people with that. So between this ancestral work, no matter how you do it, you find your way to do it, or with the grief work or with trauma work or with somatic work or whatever works for you, you find it and you do it and you clear the nervous system. And that's the thing you were talking about. It's like that I've said this before. I don't know if I said it with you when we were talking the first time, but in trauma informed work, that the reason why you have all this stuff trapped in there is because you've never closed that loop, like you were saying. So the grief helps to close the loop. You don't need to know the story. You don't need to know what happened because it may be a version of the story that you don't even really remember. It's the emotions that you're working with. So you're closing the loop by grieving and letting go of the energy of those emotions. So it's all this process you can do with the ancestors and everything. I would love to be doing the kind of work you did in South America. I think that would be so cool because I have this like connection with that somehow. I don't know how that would work, but hey.
Well, it's probably coming for you, and vice versa. I would say I would love to have done the work that you've done with the knowledge and the clarity and the processes that you've learned, because your explanation is amazing, right? So
Oh, thank
it's
you.
like it's like we're just sharing the wisdom here, and that's really what came to mind as you were talking, is this collective wisdom, because you're talking about our ancestors, which could literally just be our great grandparents, but they have wisdom for what
Mhm.
they dealt with in the world at that time. And they're sharing that wisdom with us in our lives so that we can use that wisdom. And it doesn't have to be oh, it was the Holocaust per se, but the
Right.
transmission of that wisdom can help us in our lives with what we're going about. And then we learn from our process. And like you said, then we're giving the wisdom right back to them.
Hmm.
It's this roundabout circle, and people think we're just living in this one physical reality, but we're helping many realities going on at the same time. And it's just, for me, it's like with the ancestors, I call them in all the time, even if I don't know who they are. It's like, oh, yeah, you could do DNA tests and stuff like that, but it's as simple as saying a prayer before anything important that you want to do, or just waking up in your day and, hey, ancestors, can you please be here with me now. I would
Yeah.
love to feel you. I would love to understand how we can communicate better. How can I
Yeah.
help? How can I help me? And I'd love to ask you, Caroline, because you have so much knowledge on this. Like, how has that ancestral work helped you in your life? What has it opened up for you? What doors or even feelings in your body, or we talk about like energy and trauma work a lot. Like,
Yeah.
it's be an important topic for us to be talking about it here. So maybe you can share a little there.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I guess we switch roles real quick.
I
Wasn't
always like to at least
That's
gotta
okay.
find out one or two things
Well,
about
I mean, here's the thing. What it helped me do was know who I am. It helped me to understand myself better and where a lot of my experiences, my life, my habits, my thoughts, all these different things, where all that came from. Even there was a connection, like with my grandmother. I had a list of after the I'm not sure exactly how many years, it might have been 2 or 3 years after they left Czechoslovakia and they were in Palestine. She went to the doctor, and I happened to have like an entire list of all the things that were going wrong with her. And I had some of that stuff on that list that was going with me, but it was still at a like in an early cycle. But I'm reading all this and I'm like, wait, hold on a minute. So just by understanding what she went through physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, it helped me to understand why I was feeling those symptoms, because that kind of stuff can come through as well. And so that was a huge help for me. And then with my mother, I mean, I was angry at my mother for my whole life with good reason to a point. Because when I finally understood what she went through, and I was finally able to forgive that, and I finally understood why she was who she was because of the experiences she had as a 6-year old escaping a country during a war where they were being basically forced or kicked out, or even my grandfather was beaten, and they probably saw that, or they didn't see him being beaten, but they saw the results of that. So it's like I was able to start piecing things together, and it helped me to be able to forgive.
Mm.
And that was like the biggest, most powerful thing I think that it helped me with, because when I started doing that forgiveness work, I started releasing the energy of that anger, because I knew what she went through. Even though I wasn't real happy with the way she was with me later on in life as her child, I was able to walk my way through that and be like, oh, okay, I got it now, and give a little compassion and space for that, to understand that why, so it really, really helped me in a lot of ways in connecting with all of them. And every day or every week I'm finding out something new about my ancestors now. So it's like it turns out that my mother's father, my grandfather, was not even supposed to be her father. It's very strange. Initially my grandmother was set up on another marriage back then in the late 1800s, and ended up not marrying the person she was supposed to marry, and they had to replace the marriage with, because they had a, what do they call those things, uh where
Uh,
the dowry, they had a dowry set up potentially. And so the older brother, who was supposed to marry my grandmother, ended up marrying somebody else. And then come to find out, my grandfather was the next best solution for this. So if my grandfather hadn't married my grandmother, then again, I wouldn't be here. Probably, you know what I mean? So when it starts connecting the dots like that, to me, it's helpful. Not everybody really cares about that kind of stuff. I do. I like the dots being connected. I'm a puzzle person. So yeah.
I I love that, and I especially love the forgiveness piece because I think there's a lot of people that would love to be able to forgive
Hmm.
but don't know how, or are not even aware of the love that forgiveness can open up within yourself. And it's that understanding that you're speaking of that helps the forgiveness happen, because I've seen it in my own lineage, in my mother's line, my sister to my niece to my sister to my mother to my grandmother and on. There were some harsh ways, especially with grandmother, great grandmother treating, my mother, and I watch little things trickle down, and it's, this is how I feel really about the most direct ancestral work we could do is within our family lineage. It's like we can, each person in the line can work to do a little bit of a better job than the previous person did with the pain that person was carrying and how they passed it on, right? I can say, I'm going to be the one who's going to stop it here,
Hmm.
who's gonna stop this pain just being given to the next and the next and the next, because I'm willing to step up and do the work and literally change my bloodline by, for instance, forgiving.
Hmm.
But I've worked a lot with people in my family and friends on this, because they might say, I cannot forgive. I have no idea how to forgive. I want to, I just can't. But isn't it a little bit easier with some understanding to say, I see the pain that my mother or this person went through because that thing happens. Like, it creates some room for that forgiveness. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the thing, as a result of that, now my experience was also in recognizing the same, especially with the female side, the feminine side. Um, because of the trauma and experiences that the women went through back then, they didn't have the capacity to nurture. And it came down
Yes.
in so many different generations. And for us to be able to do that work and learn what that is, and open that space for the forgiveness, the other piece of that that it brought to my life was peace, inner peace, because that way I wasn't like, because I remember my mother was always, get me out of here, get me out of here. And that probably stemmed from, the beginning of World War II.
Mhm.
She always had that statement. She's like, get me out of here. Even when she was in a calm, decent place, physically, she would always say that to me. And I got that from her. And after I started doing the work, I stopped feeling that way too.
Mhm.
So it brings it brought that inner peace in for my entire life, not just, for that particular thing. Everything became that,
Yeah.
and they say what we are in one area of our life, we are in every area. Well, that's it. It's like, if you're not peaceful in this one part, you're probably not going to be peaceful in any other part of your
Right.
life. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why that work is so important.
I
Yeah, it's
know.
incredible.
I
And
know.
also just we come from the wombs of our mother. So whatever anxiety, whatever fear she
Yeah.
was carrying while we were in her womb, that gets picked up in our cellular memory. And then that's just, I'm circling back around to when we were talking about anxiety and fear before, like where does it come from and not necessarily knowing where. Look, my mother was quite an anxious person in her life. And I began as a very anxious person in my life until
Hmm.
I started working with that energy. And then, same as you, it opened up all this peace, which I've got to believe is also being transmitted to the rest of my ancestors.
Right. Yes, absolutely. 100%. And another piece of that that's so interesting, it's like, and that's another, this is probably opening up a can of worms, because it made me think of how to work this out somehow. But, both men and women, girls and boys, come through the feminine. That the
Mhm.
feminine brings life to the earth, right? And what's interesting is this ancestral stuff that comes through is going to come and sit within the masculine itself. So if there's no nurturing and there's nothing there for the masculine even to get to grab a hold onto, it
Mhm.
will create the anxiety. And also for the females, for girls, we actually, for those of you who don't know this, and I think this is pretty wild, is that we carry our when we come into the womb and we are born, we have our grandmother's eggs. We are still carrying that generation
Wow.
of that. So whatever not just being in your mother's womb, now we're talking about grandmothers. So whatever our grandmothers went through led to the mother. So my my daughter and granddaughter are carrying my mother's, or my daughter's carrying my mother's eggs and my eggs. My granddaughter is carrying my eggs and my daughter's eggs.
I didn't even know this. This is
Isn't that crazy?
quite mind-blowing. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
know. I know. So
Wow.
that's another
You,
connection with the generations too. So there's that. I don't know where to go with that.
just that, just that little thing.
Just
Yeah.
that little thing. So let me ask you this one last question before I go into the rest of the questions that I ask my guests. It's what's your thought on, like, once we see these cycles, what practical steps can we take to break free and reclaim our energy?
Yeah. I think it starts with committing to really devoting yourself to understanding it, to putting your energy on it, to learning about it for your highest good. For me, that's a type of prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And prayer is a real devotional way to transfer I believe, the message in your heart for really who you want to be, how you want to show up, what you want to occur. And it begins with that and that sets the energetic foundation. And then it's just the follow through. I would say you don't need to know how to do it. You don't need to know where to start. You don't, because sometimes that can make your mind crazy enough. Like, what do I do about all this, right? Just setting the intention, saying, you
Yeah.
know what, I'm ready.
Yeah.
God, ancestors, higher power, whatever I pray to, teach me, pull me forth. How can I heal myself and my lineage and become the person I want to become in this world? And I find that that starts to open up the breadcrumb trail path to whatever the unique modalities are for you, because there's thousands of them
Mm-hmm.
that feel best. And sometimes they'll just show up in your life, right? You might meet someone that's into breath work and say, what's up with breath work? And then learn a little bit about that. But I do believe it's very important to work on the nervous system. because everything translates to the physical body, and it's within the nervous system is where you either feel safe or unsafe in your body. And that pertains to everything. The
Mhm.
kind of love you let in, who you're keeping out, the kind of opportunities that you're open to, all comes down to the nervous system. So things like breath work and meditation, and even just switching your physiological state in times where you might feel anxious or fearful. Sometimes I just get down and do 10 push-ups on the floor or get
Yes.
outside and take a walk in nature, because I realize that the more I try to solve these things in my mind, they cannot be solved in the mind. It just causes more fear and interruption. Now,
Yep.
there is something to creating a new narrative to live by that would have to do with working with your mind. But for me, I find this stuff is very energetic and physical body sense. And then the more that you work on calming your nervous system by learning about it, the more wisdom is revealed through the nervous system and through the heart and released through the cellular memory, to where your mind will say, ah, epiphany, awareness.
Uh-huh.
Ah, this is it, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got some new information to go off of. But once you make it a real thing and you're like, I'm up to this, I want to learn about this, I want to do this. The other piece I'll say is awareness. The more you make awareness a daily practice in your life, which is simply taking a pause and asking yourself a question, not straining too hard to find the answer, but when you're in that moment of anger, when you want to pull your hair out, when you're like, I can't deal with this, it's a pause. For me, it's a breath. It's maybe hands over my heart and saying, ah,
Mhm.
what's really happening here, Mike? I'm feeling this right now. Ah, where's this coming from? You know what? I'm not really sure. Ah, so maybe it's not even the thing I thought it was. Maybe it's something deeper. Can I just sit with that, feel it, honor it? And that's something that really works for me, taking that moment and going inward and having that little conversation with all the nervous system practices tends to open up quite a lot in a very positive way.
Yeah, yeah, and because ultimately breaking those cycles is really about reclaiming something much bigger, which is our true power.
Yes. And you just reminded me, like breaking the cycles, right? Let's just say a father to his son, to his son, to his son. Everyone in that line was very reaction based, like would fly off the hanger with anger, right? And not take those pauses. You change your lineage when you do the practice of pausing,
Hmm.
not reacting, and then taking a little bit of time to respond differently. It's that simple.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad you said that because here's the other piece of that is stepping into your true power isn't about adding more to who you are.
Yes,
It's
yes.
about peeling away the layers of fear and doubt and conditioning that's been weighing you down. And like we talked about, sometimes for generations. And it's the moment you stop living as the version that the world expects and start living as the truest, most alive version of yourself. That's when the path forward becomes clear and the energy to walk
Mhm.
it is finally yours. That's what I understand it to be. Drop them.
Mic drop, mic drop. That last line that you just said, I feel like is the summary,
Yeah,
the work of my life, and many of our life. I mean,
yeah,
right, all of us who are up to this, but that one just resonated so deeply. I'm
that's
like,
awesome.
that's it. Yeah.
So, okay, well, here we are at the last question. So
Okay.
we're going on a good time schedule right now. I'm very proud of us. So, Mike, if you could offer one piece of advice to someone just starting their healing journey, what would it be?
There's nothing wrong with you.
Ah, ah, yeah.
There's nothing wrong with you. Everything you have ever been told or thought about yourself that lives in the realm of something is off or wrong is not true. So
Yes.
start there, because the word accountability, it's not just taking responsibility, but once you can account for what is true in you, then you
Mhm.
can actually do something about it, right? So
That.
if you think there's something wrong with you and you missed the mark somewhere and you've just been off your entire life, you're kind of in this stuck in victimhood or confusion of the
And
mind,
you
and
don't
it's
even try. You
you
don't
don't
even
even
try.
try, right? You'll feel totally defeated. So
Yeah.
understand that everything has happened for a reason that you are not required to fully understand yet. But there's an acceptance to be had in that where you can just first take a breath and say, okay, everything is okay. Now, how
Yeah.
do we go from here?
Yeah. Always in the moment, always in the present.
Always in the moment.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. How do you define awakening?
Yeah, awakening, aliveness comes to mind. Yes, I could say awareness. That's kind of the go-to, right? When
Mm,
you awaken more consciously, you become aware of who you are, what's true, what's actually happening in the world around you versus what you thought was.
mhm,
Like you said, you begin reclaiming your power by going inward and discarding all of the societal pressures and expectations. But for me, that word aliveness is so important because once you start doing this work, the soul starts to become more alive. Passion starts to reawaken and show itself. A appreciation for life starts to come online more and more,
mhm,
and you awaken, and
mhm.
and there's no end point to that. But for me, that's the kind of supportive energy which happens when you're honoring yourself and just doing the things that you want to do,
Right.
and the things that, like, light you up in the path that you want to take. That energy comes online and it begins supporting you everywhere, in the
Mhm.
healing, in the dreams, and everything in between,
Because there is nothing wrong with you.
because there's nothing wrong with you.
There's that.
It's a beautiful life.
It
Yeah.
is.
Mhm.
What do you believe soul divinity is?
Soul divinity is our connection to, I mean, the divine. I wanted to use a different word there, but it's soul divinity is the highest wisdom that we always have access to within ourselves. It's the connection to that.
Hmm.
And that's undefinable, I believe, but that can open up so much in our lives because it's like you don't know what you don't know kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's when you can really honor that we are these divine souls, that we have this beautiful connection to God, whatever word you want to put on it, the universe, the creator, the great mystery.
Yeah.
When we can fully really embrace that, it just opens up so much more possibility and access, for what's going on. And the other thing I'll say is, like, knowing that soul divinity makes me feel like I'm not alone. And I don't need to go about this journey alone. We have a whole team supporting us, whether it's ancestors, God, your guides, like people that are just brought to you in your life. That's soul divinity doing that. That's wisdom that you can't
Mm.
even define. And I'll just wrap it up with, you don't have to try to even do it. It's woven into the very fabric of our beings, no matter what you believe. It's there. Trust it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it comes from making the choice of doing the work and being I say this because I did this myself and I recognize this, being consistent and persistent, and then um, being willing and being courageous, because at the end of that you get to be free. So
Yes. And I'll add just to that. I know I keep like adding to all the
that's
things
okay.
because you say so many wonderful things. That word willing
Yeah.
has, I had a teacher and this really helped me on my path. She
Yeah.
always used to say to me, Mike, if you're willing, it makes it able. And if you can just pause and say, am I at least willing, even with the thing that feels impossible, but I'm willing, then you have a shot and all is possible.
And you just made me think of something. This could go on all day. Because impossible, if you split the word, is I'm possible. They have that out there too. So just saying, just want to throw that out there. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, wakeupwithmike.com is the easiest place. And
Is
there
that
you can,
is that a
what
website? Is that a website, or is that
that's my personal website, and that's a
okay.
place where you can send a message to me. It's a place where I post my offerings and some videos, and then probably Instagram and TikTok are great places just to see my content. And my Instagram is at Wake Up with Mike, and TikTok is I am Mike Rosenberg.
Perfect. Okay. And all of those will definitely be in the description for you, uh, just down below. You probably all know that by now.
Great.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap up?
Hmm. Okay, so I'll share this last little download that came to me recently because it popped into my mind in the middle of the podcast before. I didn't know if it had a proper place, but I'll just put it in now. Yeah,
Anything's
I was
possible.
I was in a ceremony and this download came, and I find it as something that you can ask yourself anytime in your life, and you will have a great life if you continuously ask yourself this question and answer it. And that question is, how can I make the gift of this moment more beautiful? And that is very important because our language wires us to our reality. Everything is a gift. So if you can train yourself to see it as a gift, you're breathing, you have the gift of the creator. What are you doing with the gift? Even in the moments that are the most traumatic, that you can't understand why they're happening, it is still a gift because it's showing you something, it's evolving you in some kind of way. So when I find that when I ask myself, how can I make the gift of this moment more beautiful? There's always something. I can bring my energy a little better. I can smile a little bit more. I can be a little more present and let go of the story in my mind. I can choose differently. And if you ask yourself this 5 times in a day, look back at the end of the day, you'll be like, wow, that worked. So I just wanted to share that little bit there.
That's so interesting because I already had what I wanted to say to you, and the word gift is in there. So, Mike,
Hmm.
it's been such a gift having you here again. And for the audience, what we've talked about today is a reminder that transformation isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. The fears, the restarts, the self sabotage, they're not the end of your story, they're the doorway. Walk through it, and you'll find the truth of who you are waiting on the other side. Keep showing up for yourself, stay curious, and remember you already carry the light that you're seeking. Your journey is about uncovering it. So I think that should do it. And I want to say thank you so much for being here with us on Awakening Soul Divinity. That's it. That's a wrap. Peace.
Been a gift. Thank you.